So, hey JP, just so everyone knows, I'm
Right.
talking to John-Paul. He's a certified Workday consultant, currently contracting out with us guys here at Focus, working on a Prism role for one of our lead clients. Thought it'd be quite beneficial to have a chat with John regarding Prism, as I've been seeing quite a lot of Prism roles coming onto the market. Lots of people asking me questions about Prism, where it's going to head. So I thought the best protocol would be to have a chat with an expert and really get some good answers from someone that's actually working in the space now. The first
Yep.
question I think would be very beneficial to everyone would be, how can you actually make your Prism skills stand out on your CV? What can you do to make people like myself looking through your CV understand that you're an expert in that field?
Well, so I'd say there's three main things that you should definitely do, really. The first thing, it's quite an obvious thing, is to kind of prioritize it on your CV. So if you've got a multitude of skills, to have Prism prioritized on your CV. So have it as the first thing that you talk about, have it in your statement, that's what you do and that's what your intention is for finding in terms of work. The second thing I'd say you have to do is you have to say how you used it. So a lot of people, I think they can make the mistake, from what I've seen when I've been interviewing myself, of just using generic statements, just saying that they've done it, but not actually explaining like the use cases that they've worked on and what they were doing with those use cases. I think that's really beneficial for clients, especially if they've got like a unique use case. And if they're looking for someone who's done that use case before. So if you explain on your CV that you've done a specific use case, then that will stand out and it'll give you a good chance of getting a job. The third thing, which kind of links in with that, I would say explain what the benefits were from having worked on that use case. So if you worked on something that saved someone time, say how much time it saved them. If it saved money, explain that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say those are the three main things, really.
Yeah, I think they're very important, to be fair. I think
Yeah.
you're correct. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you chat to them on the phone. Oh, yeah, I'm brilliant. I've worked on Prism for X amount of time." You look at their CV, and they've just touched on reporting. They say, "I've done some
Yeah.
reporting here. I've done this," but they haven't actually mentioned Prism or, like you say, what they've done, how it's impacted the business, and sort of set up a business case for themselves. I completely agree with that. Good
Yeah.
point. Okay. So following on from that question is, what could you say were the sort of maybe three most important tips and tricks for working with Prism?
The most important tips and tricks, I'd first of all say I'd go quite broad, and I'd say this kind of applies to anyone, not if you're building reports in Workday or if you're doing configuration. But the first tip I'd say is to understand. What I see a lot of, and I've made rookie mistakes in my earlier stages of my career, is people don't take the time to understand the requirement or understand the problem that they're fixing. So what they end up doing is they rush in building stuff, which can take a lot of time and effort, and then they find out other information, and then it kind of renders all that time null and void. So if you're working with Prism, and if you're on a very big piece of work, and if it's complicated, ensure that there's a decent amount of time allocated so that you can understand with the client what they actually need. Second, following on from that one, I'd say that you need to basically plan and prototype. So you can take the time to understand something, but things happen all the time and things come out of the woodwork. So starting off with a nice little prototype, which you can show to the client, get them to use, and then give you feedback, that helps further. So you often find when you do those prototypes that questions will be asked, new things come out that the client didn't think of, and then you have a better sense of the requirements. So when you do start the actual proper build, it's a much better end product, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one, I'd say, going quite specific, is to develop a good, solid understanding of data structures. So understanding how data works and how it's organized, that is basically going to help you to basically design what are known as Prism lineages, but design them in the manner that's most efficient so that they, from a technical perspective, they work. So I'd say those are the three main important tips and tricks.
No, brilliant. I think they're all fantastic tips and tricks as well, to be fair, mate. I think classic saying, don't run before you can walk. And I think
Yeah,
that massively,
that's the one.
I think that massively comes in there, because you don't want to start building something and find out you've built it half wrong.
Yeah.
I just swear one. Completely agree.
Yeah.
I've got, obviously, last maybe question, but you could say it's two maybe coming from that, is how could you say clients are actually utilizing Prism now? That ties in, I think, to both of your points. And
Yeah.
then the second part of the question would be, why are we seeing an increased demand in certified Prism consultants?
Yeah. So the main, one of the biggest ways it's being used, and what I've been told as well from other people, is for performance. So that's the first biggest way it's being used. Workday reporting is great. One of the benefits of it is that it's live. So that was one of the original selling points when Workday came out, that you've got this live reporting. That's amazing, but one of the problems with that is that it's also quite slow when you've got a lot of data and you've got complex calculations. So one of the headaches I've had for quite some time, and a lot of people who build reports have had for quite some time, is they build all these dashboards, but then they time out, or it'll just like churn, or the user will have to wait ages for a report to run. And that often leads to people kind of implementing Workday and then saying, actually, I'm going to build my my dashboards in another tool. Prism essentially fixes that. So it allows you to build what's almost like a back-end database within Workday. When you load the data into Workday, it's front-loaded, which means it runs very fast. So I've been able to build out a lot of dashboards now that I just wouldn't have been able to dare building in the past, and everything runs perfectly. So first one, performance. That's the big standout one for me. Second one, which is not one I think Workday originally intended it for, is basically automation. So because it's essentially an ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, there's a lot of things that you can do when you build up the lineages within Prism, in that you can automate tasks that people would normally do with spreadsheets or with multiple data sources. So I've been able to build use cases in the past where someone has basically been taking down lots of different spreadsheets, joining them together with VLOOKUPs to then produce their own sort of dashboards and pivot tables. But I've been able to replicate that in Prism, and then because of that, save that person lots and lots of time. So automation's a big piece, and I've been seeing a lot of evidence of people coming through now with automation requirements now that they've got Prism. Third one, which is one of the ones that it was originally most intended for, really, is blending data. So Workday report writing is great, like as I said, but in the past you never had the ability to kind of like blend that data with other data sources. So if you had your recruitment data in another system, you couldn't join the recruitment data up in Workday. You'd have to basically get another tool to join the two together, or try and stitch it together with Excel. But now with Prism, you can essentially bring that data in and join the two together. Then you've got security. So with Workday security, it's quite hard set. You can't really configure or change it the way that it's set up. But with Prism, you create your own data sources with very specific fields. So you can create custom data sources to get around security requirements. And then last one, and I don't know how much this impacts other clients, but it's impacted me, is you can build a lot of complex calculations in there. So I've been able to do a lot of stuff around advanced statistics that I wouldn't have been able to do with the front report writer tool, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I feel like it basically takes a lot of the headaches and a lot of the problems that analysts had in the past, and it essentially fixes those problems. And then on top of that, you've got quite a juicy roadmap ahead with it, where you've got things like machine learning that are going to be integrated into Prism in the future. So it's quite an exciting tool.
Watch this space for Prism, I guess.
Watch this space, yeah.